All right, as people are joining, I'm just going to get started with my quick housekeeping announcements before we get into it. So welcome everyone. My name is Claire Ladd and I'm the Programs and Services Manager at the Mass Nonprofit Network, or MNN. And a few quick items before we get into the webinar. The recording and slides will be emailed to you following the webinar, so please keep an eye out for that. And during the webinar, if you have any questions for the presenters, you can enter them via the chat or the Q&A function at any time. We welcome any questions and we'll leave plenty of time for those. If you have any technical difficulties or just logistical questions, you can also enter those in the chat and I'll try to assist you. I also just want to give a little background about us here at MNN. Our three goals are to strengthen the nonprofit sector through advocacy, public awareness, and capacity building services. We offer regular webinars in partnership with our affiliate members. Please stay tuned for future topics and let us know if there's any topics you'd like to see. Our efforts are made possible by our more than 600 member organizations. To those of you who are members, thank you so much. And if you have not yet joined, but would like to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have, including cost savings, please visit massnonprofitnet.org/join to find out more. Today's webinar is titled Bond Financing 101. It's presented by Rob Anderson and Bob Siga of MassDevelopment. And so I will hand it over to them to get started.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I usually like to say less is more, but today you're getting double the Roberts. So if everyone is comfortable with that, just want to introduce ourselves. Rob Anderson, work as a Vice President for Business Development here out of MassDevelopment Central Region. We have a Rob in each of the regions throughout the state. So I'm going to keep on reiterating the fact that no matter where you are in Massachusetts, MassDevelopment is here to help. And within each of those regions, there is someone who does business development and someone who does a tax-exempt bond financing. I'm joined today by my colleague, Bob Siga. Bob, if you want, just
Sure. You can see from my profile that I've worked a long time. Please don't do the math, but I did work for 36 years for National Grid. So I had quite an extensive experience in treasury, financial background. And I had actually been a customer of MassDevelopment during that period. And we were able to borrow tax-exempt bond financing for pollution control projects that we initiated in our power plant. So I got to know the agency, took an early retirement from National Grid, liked the agency so much I joined it. And 16 years have gone by in a flash. Rob, can you kindly go back to the very first chart? Key word in that chart is the word partner, because that's exactly what you are when you work with MassDevelopment. We have a network of fantastic lawyers, banks that we work with. We also work with Wall Street on occasion. But at the end of the day, we root for you, the borrower. We're looking to get you the best possible deal that we can. That's our job. We like everybody that we work with, but again, at the end of the day, you get our full attention to get the best deal you can.
And that's a great jumping off point to kind of some of the objectives to this webinar. You'll get a little bit of a background on MassDevelopment. You know, one of the key things with our tax-exempt bond program, it's our superpower for nonprofits. Lower interest rate. There is some nuance to the program, but it's something that can be beneficial to help expand some of the programs and facilities that you as a nonprofit might have. MassDevelopment, in addition to the tax-exempt bonds, have other programs. We're going to kind of give a little bit of an overview on that. And then the last question, which is most important to me as a business development person, is how can we help? How can we have a conversation to bring our tools to the table to help you expand? Because at the end of the day, one of the key objectives for MassDevelopment is to improve the quality of life for residents. That happens in a multitude of ways. It's through job creation. It's through getting grants out onto the street. It's on investing in housing, both market rate and affordable. MassDevelopment is, as Bob said, a partner. It is our job to go out there and talk with as many people as possible. There might be situations where people cannot take advantage of our programs, but there is no wrong doorway in to economic development in Massachusetts. I would like to believe that MassDevelopment is one of the strongest because we work with an awful lot of different people. And we also work with a lot of different agencies. We work with businesses, developers. I spoke about housing and manufacturing, nonprofits right there in the middle. Nonprofits create the basis upon which you can build other programs. There are the services out there. There's the housing that could be provided. Those are all things where MassDevelopment's financing programs can assist. And again, it's not Rob. Rob, this one covers central Massachusetts. It's a kind of large area, and there's no way someone like me, no matter how much coffee I drink, could cover the whole state. We have regional offices. You can kind of see where they're located. We have one in Springfield, Lawrence, Fall River, Boston. MassDevelopment perhaps is most well known in the state as the entity that owns and operates Fort Devens. So we have lots of experience, lots of offices. We have a regional person who can help take you in that next step to take advantage of some of our programs. Now, we're going to talk briefly about all of these. However, for nonprofits, the best and most useful tool for a nonprofit is our tax exempt bond program. Because I am a jack of all trades that knows a little bit about all of the programs, I often take the time to turn it over to Bob to go into the nuance of the program, and I'm going to do that, Bob, right now.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Rob. Yeah, clearly this is one of our superpowers. This is a mechanism, you know, the words are kind of scary. However, the process is not scary. The process can get quite detailed, quite involved, but frankly, it's MassDevelopment's job to handle that process, not yours. Okay, and I'll explain that a little further, but you can see who the eligible borrowers are. At the top of the list are nonprofits. You're engaged in what we're engaged in. It's all about public purpose. Human service providers, higher education, cultural facilities, all of which you folks are involved with, all of which we pursue to facilitate what you want to do. It's part of our mission. We also do assisted living. We do hospitals, lots of hospitals, small manufacturing companies, environmental initiatives, governmental entities, and a very important one is affordable rental housing. As you all know, there's a shortage of housing in Massachusetts. It's a hugely important issue to the governor. Therefore, it's important to us. And we have ways in which we can take either older facilities and convert them to housing or build brand new facilities. We also do higher education and charter schools, which is kind of a special way in which we get those transactions done. What's eligible are new equipment. It's not on the list, but you can do renovations as well. Acquisition of buildings, land, new construction, debt refinancing for nonprofits only. That's worth a conversation with us. If you're carrying conventional debt and you'd like to lower your interest rate, we'd be happy to advise you on that. And then some soft project costs can be included in the bond financing as well. Thanks. This next chart, I always find it kind of confusing, but really what it means is that we're the conduit lender. We're in the middle between the bank, who is the lender, and you, the borrower. And we facilitate this transaction by ensuring that it complies under tax code to qualify for this type of financing. So, you know, the bank sets the terms, they manage the process just like they would with a loan. And your focus would be on negotiating the best possible deal you can get from the bank. So yes, there are rules and regulations that have to be complied with. We keep our eye on that, and we have attorneys who help us in that regard as well. So the benefits to you, the nonprofit, are the interest rate on the loan, if you will, we call a bond, is lower than it otherwise would be. So just to give you, put some numbers on that, conventional rates are in the 6s these days, and tax exempt rates are now in the 4s, 4.5 to 4 3/4. So if you think of your own personal mortgage, if you could have a mortgage at 1.5 or 1 3/4% lower than it otherwise would be, think of what your savings would be. That's how a tax exempt bond financing works. You can maintain the relationship you have with your bank, or we can find one for you. We also can fill gaps, and that's very important sometimes. So for example, if you approach a bank with a project and they're willing to loan 75% of the appraised value of the project. We can boost that up to 90% with a guarantee from Mass Development. And sometimes that comes in really handy to help you preserve your cash. You know, we're a key partner. Again, the word partner keeps coming up in economic development, and we can help bring other resources to the table as well. So the next step is, you know, you would identify a project, you have an estimate of what the budget is. It doesn't have to be exact. You can decide on a banking partner, or again, we can help you with that process. I'm doing, as we speak, a request for proposal for a small nonprofit in the area, and we've gotten some very attractive banks from 5 banks. So we're happy to do that. That's part of our service to you. We can help you explore grant opportunities, and Rob is a veritable expert in that regard. He's worked around the state. He's worked directly for the state. He knows where all the little bags of money are hidden, and we can really help you in that regard. You know, and we'll ask you to provide us with 3 years of financials so that we can take a look and make sure that this is an undertaking that you can handle. And again, this next point is hugely important to me. It's not your responsibility to know all the nuances of tax-exempt bond financing. I've been at this for 16 years and I've got a pretty good handle on how it works, but it's my job to guide you through that process.
Now, Bob, if I might,
Please.
on the list of before starting, you should, that's, I like to think of that as part of the application process, but there is one key point beforehand. As the business development person, talk to Mass Development. If you have a concept or an idea, pick up the phone and give me a call. Because
Absolutely.
Again, it's a long-term relationship and partnership, and learning the kind of things that might be necessary to actually submit the application is great. We have them listed right there. You have a scope and you have an outcome and you have a budget. However, learning about setting those up and getting the pieces in place at an earlier point in time can be done by conversation with the business development team.
I think that's a great point, Rob. You know, we enjoy talking to people, and the call to us is free. And before, you know, you start spending money in any regard, hiring lawyers, paying application fees and so forth, we have a really good idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work, and what the best path is for you. And if that path is with Mass Development, that's great. If it's not, we will advise you that there's a better route for you to take.
And the thing is, it goes to some of the clients that we have worked with in the past. I had a member of the team pull together some logos. If there's someone on the webinar who does not see their logo up there but would like to be there in the future, give us a call, because we have done work throughout the state. And you know, as you start going through that application process, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second, there will be the opportunity to think about this project now and the second project in the future, because it's not a one bite at the apple and you're done. This relationship can last for many years.
Indeed, indeed. So about the application process, I've been known to actually drive out and sit with the borrower and help them fill out the application. Fortunately, it's a very straightforward application. It's only 3 or 4 pages, does have some financial information in there. Again, I can assist with that. The second point is that there is an additional lawyer involved in the transaction, and that lawyer serves as bond counsel. Very important role, and I'll go over it in detail what they do. But what Mass Development's role is that we're the issuing authority, and that's required by the IRS. We take all the necessary board votes within the agency. That's my job. We also guide you through the process of filing an application with the Mass Historical Commission. That's very important. That's required. If you do tax-exempt financing in Massachusetts, we have to notify the commission what you intend to do. And, you know, it can be tricky sometimes, because if you're in a historic district, you want to make alterations, particularly on the outside of the building. Sometimes they can have issues with that. So we can guide you through that process. We have a contractor policy as well. We want to ensure that the contractor that you use on your project is one who is not on any debarred list that the state maintains or the government in general maintains. And we do that research to make sure that doesn't happen. Bond counsel, you know, who they represent, they basically ensure that this complies under tax code, because they issue an all-important opinion of counsel to the investor in the transaction who is typically a bank, but can be Wall Street as well, that says that this is entitled to specific tax benefit treatment to the investor. They quarterback the entire process. They view things like leasehold improvements versus property acquisitions. We can do leasehold improvements, in fact, I've done them before. And next point is very important, is this concept of a drawdown facility. And what that means is that if you have a project that's going to take 24 months to build, you don't want to take all the funds at closing. You want to take them as you need it. And this is particularly helpful if you're doing a capital campaign alongside the construction period. Because as those capital campaign funds come in, and they're typically pledged over a period of time, you can use them to pay down the bond. So you draw it as you need it, and you pay down as the campaign funds come in. There are things like mandatory versus optional put and call dates. Those are all things that the bond counsel will pay attention to. We pay attention to them as well. Sometimes banks want the ability to call the debt at any time. We're very careful about keeping an eye on that. Similarly, prepayment language, that's very important. That's something we all look at very, very carefully, because again, if you're running a capital campaign and you want to pay down the debt, you want to be able to do it without penalty. And we can negotiate that for you.
And so with all of these, we have a couple of case studies to just kind of demonstrate how MassDevelopment works with the bank and the client. Well,
yes, this is AMSA, the Advanced Math and Science Academy. It's a charter school located in Marlborough. Hugely successful school. I believe the last time I looked, they were rated 5th in the Commonwealth in high schools, not just charter schools. So they focus on STEM education. I've been out to the school. I've sat through a class. The kids are so enthusiastic. It's really a wonderful combination of kids from all across races and nationalities and so on and so forth. It's just a great, wonderful place. So what we did for them was we issued a $24 million tax exempt bond so they could buy the facilities that they were leasing. And they also made improvements to the facilities and included a gym. They serve about 1,000 students. I think they have about 1,000 students on a waiting list. So it's very, very popular. Oh, I should mention the fact that we did issue guarantees for this, and guarantees are very helpful with charter schools, because charter schools are granted a charter by the state every 5 years. And typically when the school wants to apply for a loan, they want to apply for it for a long period of time, like 25 years. So the guarantee shores up the deal and enhances it, so it makes it attractive to the bank. Now, in this case, this was an interesting one. Silicon Valley Bank purchased the bond, and the school also had a significant amount of deposits with Silicon Valley Bank. And you may remember a while back, Silicon Valley entered into a liquidity crisis and went bankrupt. So we acted as a partner to AMSA. We don't just do financing. We knew that they were in trouble, so we helped them, and we stepped in and ensured that that bond was transferred to a solid bank, as well as the deposits. So there was a nervous weekend for the school where they were unsure of whether or not they'd be able to recover their deposits, but they did, and we helped them along the way. So again, we're all about job creation, maintaining jobs. They have 126 jobs, and this project provided 65 construction jobs. Next one is a whole different kettle of fish. This one is Harvard, and you can see the amount that they borrow. This is not untypical for Harvard. When they borrow big. So this is a $207 million bond. But what's interesting about it is that it's a green bond. And the way that you get a designation is you apply through the International Capital Markets Association, who have principles about what constitutes a green bond. It's basically how you use the proceeds of the bond financing, and it has to be for environmental improvements. So you have to take on reporting requirements and so on and so forth. So you can see how big that university is. They serve 24,000 students, 12 schools. They have over 16,000 jobs. And this project created almost 5,000 construction jobs. Now, the difference between this is that this is a public offering. So when you issue a bond of this size, you generally don't issue that with a local bank. You do it in the public bond markets. And that's what Harvard accesses. And they use Goldman Sachs. That's their partner in the public market transaction. So is this yours or mine?
It's both of ours.
Okay, well, you can go.
No, it's one of the things that we always like to say, and again, I like redundancy because sometimes it's how people learn. We are a partner. We do not replace banks. Our goal is to make sure that the person that comes to Mass Development that borrows money, either from us through our lending or through a bank, through a tax-exempt bond, gets the best deal. So we do not compete with them. Our goal is job creation in Massachusetts. And if we compete with the banks, unfortunately, we'd adversely affect the people working there. That's not our job. So for nonprofits out there that have a good relationship with a bank, whose members of the bank are on their board, we're not going to compete. We are going to enhance and we're going to try to strengthen it. And so, you know, with our guarantee program, which we'll talk about, we can get a higher loan to value.
Exactly. Yes, essentially, we're a gap filler with other banks. They approach us. So if somebody approaches their local bank with a project that, let's say, doesn't qualify for tax-exempt bond financing, and the bank has appetite for it, let's say they want to borrow 500,000, and the bank is willing to do 350 of that, we can fill out that gap. And in fact, that's the role that we actually prefer. You know, we do tax credit gap financing kind of thing, where a developer will apply for a certain type of historical tax credit or whatever the case may be. The problem with tax credits is that they are typically awarded when the project's complete. So if there's a 24-month period of time, we can issue a loan to fill that gap and then get repaid within 24 months. That's another role that we play as well.
And that's a great transition to some of the other programs from Mass Development. I think for nonprofits, the superpower is the tax-exempt bonds, the lower interest rate, the ability to be flexible, to maintain those existing relationships with the bank. But we do more. And anytime as a business development person, I have the opportunity to spread the gospel about some of our other programs, I always want to take advantage of it. We can lend. We have a lending department that, like a bank, can issue loans either in participation with a bank or on our own for nonprofits, manufacturers, and businesses that contribute to the quality of life for residents. The guarantee program is one of those things that we try to leverage as much as possible, because money in the bank for operations for a manufacturer to buy supplies, to do payroll, might be more beneficial than making a down payment. That same thing can flow through to nonprofits as well. I tell people this all the time, free money is always better than debt, which is where some of Mass Development's grant programs could be useful. One that's particularly close to me is the underutilized property program. That building that's been unoccupied in the downtown for 2 or more years. And someone says, if we could energize it and flip that switch, that property could have a far-reaching and transformative economic impact. Well, property owners, nonprofits, municipalities, and the private sector can apply for this grant. It's something that is highly competitive, but can be useful to, again, go back to our overall mission, the quality of life for residents. Now, I did talk about a transformation. We have what is called the Transformative Development Initiative, or TDI. Within gateway cities, we identify blocks within the city where we are going to hyper-focus on outreach, hyper-focus on our equity input, and try to build partnerships within those communities to help take that next step. Because Massachusetts has identified 26 gateway cities, it's not something that could be rolled out throughout the state. But it is something that if you do have a community that has a TDI district, Mass Development is, again, your partner. And again, we have a variety of programs. We can do pre-development loans. We have a program called PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. which actually helps property owners make clean energy investments into their properties. Where we might not have a role, we have relationships with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. Brownfields, that's dirty dirt.
Hugely
That's something.
important. Hugely important.
If you want to do new construction and the dirt is not clean, how can you take that next step? MassDevelopment is a resource there. And again, in thinking about things outside of the four corners of an owned property, we do have programs that can help invest in infrastructure. Now, because I'm here in Worcester and because I like case studies and I like talking about those things that I can basically see from my office, I wanted to bring a couple of, unique projects forward. In Worcester, there used to be an old, what was that?
Manufacturing facility that this was one of the most polluted sites in the city of Worcester at one time. And it happens to be a stone's throw from the beautiful new ballpark that now sits in downtown Worcester. So this was blighted property, just an ugly facility that had been vacant for decades.
And so MassDevelopment came to the table along with other economic development partners, including the Worcester Business Development Corporation and the City of Worcester, to do site cleanup. As a result of that site cleanup, there is now a ice center there. Kids come from all over the region to play hockey. There are events that can happen there. It is a jewel in the downtown.
Agreed.
That has economic development impact for the restaurants and visitors to the city. That's where MassDevelopment is a partner with people who are looking to invest in the communities. And again, building upon our other programs, within Worcester, there had been a TDI district. MassDevelopment purchased this facility at 526 Main Street, very close by to the Hanover Theater. It was a pawn shop.
It was a pawn shop.
It was a pawn shop back in the
There's
day.
a lot of drug deals going on right outside the door of the pawn shop. So it was another blighted, horrible property that the city of Worcester was so anxious to remove and renovate.
And so the picture that people can see on the screen is the before picture. There's actually soon to be coming an after picture where a group, the Mankiti group, has been making facility improvements. They have tenants, and it is going to help enliven that neighborhood. If you are a nonprofit that has a TDI district, and there are those relationships, build upon them. Okay, and the follow-up to that is, although the TDI districts only last for 3 years, MassDevelopment has been around since the 90s. We're not going anywhere. We still want to have those conversations about things that we can do to help. And I hate to say this is my favorite slide because I like food and I've actually toured the property. Bisou Sweets was a small manufacturer. The woman owner started it out of her kitchen. She moved to a commercial space at Stowe Airport. But at some point in time, she wanted to expand. She needed to add more jobs. She had to cook more cookies, make more whoopie pies and things of that nature. Working with MassDevelopment, we did a guarantee. We did a commercial loan. The one thing I will point out that the job numbers in this slide need to be updated. It's over 90 jobs. That it says 54, it's over 90. And she is continuing to expand. The reason why she has the ability to expand is MassDevelopment coming to the table with our loans and our programs, and her being able to get a space that when she moved there was a little bit too big. She has now filled it out. She has added those jobs and contributed greatly to the Leominster economy. And so when you end with food, everyone gets hungry, but it's also, the last slide is, let's talk. On the business development side, I do not mind having conversations. On the tax exempt bond side, Bob is my right hand when we're out there talking about things where I have limited knowledge. And so if there is any interest, my contact information is up there. If you were in Lawrence, I've got a colleague, Keitha Romani, that I can make the connection to. You don't have to try to navigate it. MassDevelopment is your partner in hand-holding. There's no wrong doorway into economic development, and we are here to help. So hopefully, we have given you a good overview of the tax exempt bond program, MassDevelopment in general, and things that we can do to help. So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing the slides. And if there are any questions, I haven't been paying attention to the chat. Happy to answer any if they come up.
Questions just came in, so we have a
Oh,
question
awesome.
from Jessica asking, I saw collateral mentioned on one of the slides. Are nonprofits still eligible if we do not have collateral?
That's a decision that the bank would make, that the investor would make for a tax exempt bond. We frankly don't take a position on that. We have done transactions that don't include collateral, but they're not easy to do, quite frankly. Banks, that's one of the first questions they want to know. They want to know how is this loan going to be secured? So most of the transactions that we do have collateral, although that's not a position that MassDevelopment takes.
We have a question in the chat as well from Kumar asking, could you speak to the eligibility for UPP?
Yes, I love the program because grants are a fabulous tool. For UPP, again, it's open to municipalities, nonprofits, and the private sector. The applicant is the property owner. So again, if you are a nonprofit leasing space in a building that is unoccupied, it is not you that would apply, it would be the property owner. Property ownership is basically, well, you have the deed and it's yours, or you have a purchase and sale. If you were a nonprofit thinking about that and you've got a purchase and sale, you could conceivably apply for the UPP program. UPP is basically for buildings that are empty. However, we all know that things built in the 1940s and 50s are perhaps not code compliant or ADA compliant. The UPP program can be used for code enhancements as well as ADA compliance. So within each region of the state, there is a member of staff that can offer technical assistance about whether or not someone could be eligible for UPP. The expression of interest does open in January of 2025 for the next round, and the application is due in June. So there is time to come up with a strategy, determine eligibility, and kind of take those next steps.
Rob, should you talk about how competitive that process is?
I will, yes. Last year, there were 224 applications for the UPP. Again, it's statewide, and anyone can think of a empty building within their downtown. More often than not, it's the building with a red X on it to let the fire department know about it. The conversations with MassDevelopment could be useful in identifying those parts of the story that would be most important, such as the number of jobs being created, the housing units being created, and kind of how there's also some skin in the game from either the municipality or the applicant themselves. The benefit is, like I said, there is a person in each region that can help and assist on that. You're looking at the guy in central Massachusetts. Again, if you happen to do outreach, we can make those introductions. We can help guide you through it. One of the key things for the UPP is the state likes to see an applicant leveraging other state programs. So as an example, if you have a capital stack and you're hoping for a grant and you need a tax exempt bond or some type of guarantee with the bank to help kind of position yourself in a strong place, you might have a better shot at a UPP application. So hopefully that answered the question. I'm always happy to talk about that for people.
We have another question in the Q&A from Jessica. Are nonprofits eligible for tax exempt bond funding if the construction project in question is under a long-term lease versus in a property we own?
That's a sort of a maybe answer. It depends on how long the lease is. If the lease is like a 50-year lease kind of thing, which is a transaction that I'm working on currently with a Little Humane Society. The town has granted them property under a 50-year lease. They are applying for tax exempt bond financing and they will be approved for that financing. So it depends. If it's a short-term lease, 5-year lease, the answer is no, unfortunately. It has to be considered ownership under tax law.
Now, one of the things that I always tell people, and I'm always happy to give time back to people during their day, is that I sometimes feel we open up the fire hose and we give people an awful lot of information up front, and they don't have the opportunity to take a deep breath and think about those questions that might come up afterwards. That's kind of where a call to mass development could be very useful, because we can take a more measured approach. We can come and visit. I think when I spoke about Bisou Sweets, touring their property, seeing the whoopie pies being made, leaving with whoopie pie samples to bring back to the office, always a good thing. So we don't mind visiting. We don't mind having the conversations. And again, because there's a nuance to the programs, we don't expect this tax exempt bond financing 101 to be the end all be all. You know, there's a reason why it's 101 and not advanced placement. It's because we're here to help. And so if I could leave the attendees with one thing, it's that picking up the phone and talking with Mass Development is not a downside. It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
And we can always try to bring value to the table.
You should think of us as a resource, because that's really what our role is. You know, we're not salespeople and we don't try to push products on anybody. And again, we just try to determine the best route for you, not for us. So just keep that in mind. And again, Rob's right. The call is free. We know a lot of people across the Commonwealth. We know a lot of resources across the Commonwealth. We know a lot of nonprofits across the Commonwealth as well. The logo for the YMCA was on one of our charts. I sat on the board for 10 years. I've been affiliated with that Y since high school, and that's been a while. But I continue to be their friend and advisor in spite of the fact that I'm not on the board anymore. Bump into them in the city. We have those relationships with people, and that's what we like to have with our borrowers. It's really a relationship that we're trying to build.
Thank you so much to the presenters again. And like I said, I'll be sending out a follow-up email. So that will also have the contact information. And thanks to everyone for attending today, and have a great rest of your day.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.